we inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for joining me today. Got several great guests lined up for you. First of all, Rep Loudermilk, who we've had on multiple times, congressman from Georgia, leading the way right now in so many different areas, has always been great on the Constitution and bringing back declaration principles. Did that as a state senator in Georgia and now for several years in Congress, and currently with the assignment of essentially bringing the truth to the American people about what actually happened on January 6th instead of the lies and the narrative of the left. And I respect Congressman Loudermilk so much for his approach on this. No matter who the truth benefits or not, he's bringing it out, and we need that restoration of faith in our institutions. So good to have you, man. Thanks for coming on, Congressman Rep Loudermilk.
Well, it's good to be with you.
Well, you guys continue to dig deep into the whole J6 committee debacle, and man, you've uncovered a lot of stuff that most people in America have no idea this is going on. But, you know, once again, getting Congress to now have to do something to undo what it did in the past, that's tough. So what is it you're attempting to do with this repudiation of the fact, quote unquote, fact findings of the previous committee?
To set the record straight, when Kevin McCarthy, who was Speaker then, asked me to take on this task of investigating the security failures at the Capitol, what really happened on January 6th, and the actions of the Select Committee, I told him I'd do it under two conditions. One, that I was given the resources and the authority to conduct a real investigation, not a politically based one, and that I was given the freedom to find the truth, regardless of what that truth is, and present it to the American people. And he said, that's exactly what I want done. And so, very quickly, we found out that the information that was supposed to be preserved for us, we did not have all of it. And that a lot of evidence was not retained by the Select Committee. So we spent about the first year just rebuilding all the documents that they had that either they destroyed or sent away or put in hiding. And so out of all that information is the truth of what happened. And so we want to make sure that future generations of Americans know what really happened, what led to those events, but more importantly, what didn't happen and what didn't lead to those events, which is basically a narrative that was painted by the Select Committee. They went into this with a predetermined narrative, and they weren't going to let anything, including the truth and facts, stand in their way. And basically what they did is if somebody came in and testified to something that didn't fit their narrative, they just conveniently lost or removed that evidence, and they cherry-picked what they wanted to say. Basically, Trump organized this, he planned it, and he stood in the way of stopping it, and which none of that is the truth. And
it was like a classic show trial, right? I mean, they literally designed it to create this narrative and back up this narrative that they were pushing. And the fact that they hid so much from you guys and destroyed so much of the evidence, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that's been now over a year ago, the first time we had you on to talk about this, and you were already really surprised at the lack of just respect for the process that had taken place. And you and I had this conversation. We talked about the fact that restoring faith in the institutions is going to require exactly what you've done, which is to go in exactly as you just described, saying, hey, wherever the evidence leads, if this makes Trump look bad, if it makes Republicans look bad, we're going to go there and show it. If it makes Democrat, it doesn't matter. It's not a party thing. It's what actually happened. So for you to be able to present this evidence to the whole House body and get them to take some kind of action, that's a big step towards that restoration of faith in the institutions.
It absolutely is. And, we need to make sure that future generations, when they look at this, they know what happened. We also need for Congress to know what really happened, because through all this, we're uncovering massive amounts of corruption in almost every department. I mean, things that we found out is even the Secret Service. They got their eye off their mission because they were focused more on DEI and social issues and politics, and not doing their job, which became evident as we were investigating even the pipe bombs that were left on January 5th, left in an order so they would be found. But we had, I have video evidence of Secret Service agents who were advancing then Vice President Kamala Harris's visit to the Democrat national headquarters, right there, just outside of Capitol Hill. They went to advance to do the sweeps to make sure everything was safe, and the agent walked right by the pipe bomb twice.
Wow.
Never saw it. Even had a dog. Never alerted on it, and it was literally left to be seen. And then, when they did find it, they evacuated her, bringing her out the door right next to the pipe bomb. So there was a lot of incompetence going on at the Secret Service then, which played into obviously the July 13th issues and other issues they've had. And so throughout this process, we're uncovering incompetence, corruption that has to be exposed, and you have to know the truth before you can actually fix things. So, and that's another reason why we need to correct the record.
Well, and brother, we got to do a whole nother show on just that topic, because it seems to be happening everywhere. I mean, the whole FEMA, they are to the disaster now. And you look at these videos where they're, it's all about transgenderism and all this stuff that has nothing to do with FEMA whatsoever, but it's just like the DEI stuff. It just completely gets you off target and off mission. And we see that, in federal agency after federal agency. What do you expect process wise? Like, as you present this to the House, what exactly are you asking them to do? And we've covered other programs. We'll link today to a lot of the details you went into in previous programs on a lot of the things that you found. But what's the process as you present this? What are you asking the House to do?
Well, we're basically going to seek to have a resolution passed that basically disavows the Select Committee's report because it is so biased and it is flawed. It's filled with untruths. And so to do this, we're going to have to go down and make the case, basically line by line. What is fact? What is fiction within the Select Committee? And you'll be surprised how much fiction there is. Every time we think we're close to closing this up, we uncover something else. Most recently, the Department of Defense was involved in a major cover-up. There were 2 delays in getting National Guard there to help. The first was from the Speaker's office, kept denying the police chief's request to bring in the National Guard until shots were fired in the Capitol. Then she thought it was important to bring them in. That'd be Nancy Pelosi. The second delay was once the actual request was made to the Pentagon, because you have to request it or they can't send them. Separation of powers under the Constitution. Once that request was made, which was at 2:30 in the afternoon, we're talking about between 4 and 6 hours after that before the National Guard actually arrives.
Wow.
And so we started looking at this. The Department of Defense Inspector General actually investigated this and basically said it was the National Guard's fault. But we started getting whistleblowers from senior leadership in the D.C. National Guard that said we were actually at the armory dressed with our riot gear ready to go from early that morning. We were ready. We were purposefully delayed by the Pentagon, so we started investigating. And this is where we've actually obtained a lot of documents that the Select Committee didn't even go out and get. And we started, as part of this investigation, we found out that General Milley testified under oath that on January the 3rd, President Trump ordered the National Guard to be ready to deploy to protect people and keep things safe on January 6th because they knew there's a lot of people coming. He delegated the authority to deploy the National Guard to the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, and Secretary of Army on January the 3rd. They had full authority to do it. This is something we found out, extending our investigation.
3 days before.
We've uncovered that the Pentagon purposefully delayed the National Guard. They didn't like the optics. Some were afraid the perception they were participating in insurrection, which I don't understand that, because if you believe an insurrection was going on, you're delaying the National Guard to go and stop it.
That's right.
But the truth was the Pentagon purposely delayed the National Guard, didn't want them there until after the violence was over. What good does that do?
No
so
kidding.
These are more illustrations of, okay, we've uncovered this. Now we have to go back and not only correct the record from the Select Committee report, because they just took what the Department of Defense IG said, but now we have to go to the Department of Defense IG, and we're trying to get them to correct their report, which so far they're not willing to do, even though their report is contrary to the very evidence that they obtained, that it was a purposeful delay by the Department of Defense, not by the D.C. National Guard.
Wow. Man, getting the information out there is the hard part, but steps like this help with that. And of course, Congressman, the left continues the narrative. And the more this stuff comes out, the more I feel like this is the Rostock fire of 1933 in Germany, because, the narrative is, of course, we heard it in the vice presidential debate, Tim Walz saying, this is the first president to try to overturn the election. Well, nobody was trying to overturn the election. They were just asking for electors to be questioned and investigated, and that the right person would, in fact, be installed based on that investigation. I mean, the narrative continues, and a lot of Americans believe it. They actually think that there was some sort of insurrection to actually take over the government and all of these things. And there were bad things that happened, but that's the problem when they start lying about it, is you lose this, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but you lose this ability to separate the bad actors from the good actors, and you lose this ability to actually have just common sense in looking at it, so you can prosecute people that did bad things, but not prosecute people that didn't do bad things, and have some sort of balance that just makes sense. It's all one extreme or the other. And I just appreciate you bringing some common sense to this and looking at it with, true justice eyes, right? We're trying to actually find justice. We're not trying to feed one narrative or the other.
Right. And, it's selective prosecution as well, because one thing we're bringing out is, where's the FBI with the pipe bomb investigation? Are they putting the same effort into that they're putting in going after the grandma who happened to, go into the Capitol but didn't do anything and left?
Right.
We also have the gallows is an issue. There was a gallows erected at the Capitol that stayed up from early that morning till late in the evening. Why was that allowed to be up that long, and who put it up? We actually have a clear picture of from video surveillance of the person, one of the person or persons that erected that gallows. A clear picture of them. Why is the FBI still doesn't know who erected the gallows, but they're using facial recognition for protesters, right? And I'm not saying not everyone should be in jail, because there was tremendous acts of violence taking place that day, but justice should be equally applied to everyone. That's right. That is the definition of justice, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing a politicization and a weaponization of basically every agency in the federal government, especially those that had any part dealing with the January 6th riots.
Yeah, it's that whole blind justice idea that we used to really love and believe in, right? Where we would look at this and say, it doesn't matter your party affiliation, your religious affiliation, the color of your skin, justice is going to treat everybody the same. And this pox on all houses has just been toxic. Yes. And you guys are helping to, get rid of that basically, and remove that, and not purify is not the right word, but basically bring back, this blind justice idea that we're going to look at it regardless of who the actors are. When will this take place, Barry? Is this something in the coming weeks, or will it be after January? Or when do you think this would happen?
No, I think that we're going to be pushing to get this through during the lame duck session. We were hoping to do something in September, but we kept uncovering more and more that we had to follow up on.
Yeah.
One of those, which will be coming out in the next few days, is that we have uncovered back channel communications between Liz Cheney and some key witnesses before they testified, without attorneys present, which is in violation of attorney ethics and law. But specifically, their star witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who had already testified 3 times, didn't give them what they were looking for. We're releasing evidence that we have of text communications between Cassidy Hutchinson, Alyssa Farah, who is the go-between, and Liz Cheney herself, to set up meetings, of which Cassidy's attorney wasn't present. And during those meetings is when she started changing her testimony. In fact, after one meeting, Cassidy Hutchinson left the meeting. She fired her attorney, and Liz Cheney arranged for her to get a new attorney pro bono.
Wow.
So
talk about witness coaching. Oh my goodness.
Oh, this will be coming out very, very soon. And so it's still this investigation is like an octopus with many tentacles that are, each tentacle keeps uncovering more and more. But we're looking at doing a final report before the end of the year. But prior to that final report is coming out with this resolution, basically discrediting the select committee's report. Another reason we need to do this
Hold that thought, folks. We got to take a quick break. You're listening to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. Our special guest today, right now, Congressman Barry Loudermilk.
As a nurse, I primarily work with children who are abused and exploited in trafficking, and I frequently see very unfair situations. We must talk about the issue of abuse. We can't base our actions on fear. We have to be faith-informed in what we do.
The Dr. Nurse Mama Show. For more from Dr. Jessica Peck, tune in at 2 p.m. Central on American Family Radio or on the podcast page at afr.net.
You can't sit this election out. I know a lot of Christians do. This is true that God is sovereign. I tell you that all the time. But they fancy that somehow that is separate from their personal responsibility. We are His hands and feet. And so that's why we have to do what's right. The Bible says, to him that knoweth to do good and just doesn't do it, to him it is sin.
Sandy Rios 24/7 with your host, Sandy Rios. Listen on the podcast page at afr.net.
There have been people in our nation who have been pining for wickedness. As we read through Romans 1, you see over and over, God gave them over. God gave them over. But what is happening is evidence of abandonment. We need to understand that that is included within the wheelhouse, if you will, of God judging a people.
Join Abraham Hamilton III on the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on AFR.
If God could speak, what would he say?
The Bible subjects itself to historical verification.
He says, we saw this.
We go to the Bible wanting to hear what the living God has to say to us.
When God speaks, what does he say?
The God Who Speaks. Visit thegodwhospeaks.org.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
We're back here on At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach. Thanks for staying with me today. Congressman Barry Loudermilk with us today, and we were just talking about the reasons that the truth needs to come out, why this committee work is so important. Let's jump right back in with our time with Congressman Barry Loudermilk.
Another reason we need to do this is this report is being used in litigation. Jack Smith is using the report from Congress as fact in litigation. In Georgia, they were trying to use some of that. And a lot of what we've uncovered helped to get those trials.
You're talking about those Fulton County charges against John Eastman and all of the folks there. Yeah.
Right. They're using some of the Select Committee's report, which we have proven to be false. Real quick, I can give you one prime example of how all this has played out. Cassidy Hutchinson, again, the star witness that they had, she's the one who testified that Trump was so angry on January 6th, he attacked a Secret Service agent, and he tried to take control of the SUV he was in and make them drive him to the Capitol. Now, that's hard to believe to start with.
Right.
Well, that story came out after she had a meeting with Liz Cheney. They called her in for a fourth deposition under oath. That's when she started telling these really outlandish stories. Without any corroboration of her story, they scheduled an emergency televised hearing and they paraded her in front of the world, and she told all these stories. Uncorroborated. It's real easy to corroborate that story. You call the driver, the Secret Service driver, in and question him. She testified in June that this happened. They did not call the driver in until November, after the midterm elections.
Oh, wow. And while the narrative's out there just being repeated over and over and over again. Yeah.
And get this, when they finally called him in, this is one of the interviews, the transcripts we did not have. We were able to track them down and found out they were sent to the Department of Homeland Security. Now, these are House documents. They were sent to the executive branch, and we also had some that were sent to the White House. We have obtained all those now. When I sat down and read the driver's transcribed interview for the first time, I was amazed because his attorney chastised the Select Committee and said, your witness testified in June of these allegations. I and my client reached out to you in July, August, and September to come in and correct the record. And now it's November that you're calling us in.
Oh, wow.
So they're basically, the driver was saying, I want to tell you the truth. And they were stonewalling him. And now get this, Rick, when they finally got to talk to him, they never asked him about that event.
Unreal.
He had to interject it on his own, and they tried to stop him from saying anything. But we have it. Every Secret Service agent said none of that happened. But all of that evidence disappeared. That totally undermines everything that Cassidy Hutchinson said. She testified about Trump so mad he threw food against the wall. We have the testimony of the valet who worked in the White House dining room, who said there was no food in the room that day for him to throw. We have another person that was very close to Trump, a White House employee, who said he never chanted "Hang Mike Pence" and never agreed with the protesters. All the things that she testified for. Somebody who was first person in the room at that time said that never happened, but all that evidence was sent away and was never part of their final report.
You know, this is downstream from, and I know we're out of time, but this is downstream from the very first bad decision that tainted this whole committee, which was to not let the Republican leadership pick their own members.
Right.
You know, the idea of following process and both sides having their voice instead of Nancy Pelosi handpicking the people on this thing to set up this whole deal. I mean, right there, just we've lost that honor of the process and the system and the, you know, regardless of what party you're in or whatever, that we used to respect that. And you guys bringing that back and reestablishing that, it's going to take time. But, man, I just applaud you for continuing to do that. The nation needs this to happen, and we appreciate you so much, just being steadfast in this whole thing, and can't wait to get the full report and look forward to getting you back in a few weeks, maybe towards the end of the year as you get closer to actually having the vote on the resolution. But God bless you, brother. Tell the whole family howdy from the Greens and the Bartons, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Enjoyed being one.
That was Congressman Barry Loudermilk. Always good to have him on. We'll get him back as more and more comes out from this committee. This is the kind of what Bill Bennett used to call the sunlight's the best disinfectant. It's the best way. You have to disclose these things. I've heard Mike Lindell say it over and over again that, you know, the whole 2020 election debacle was necessary to uncover the corruption that's out there so that we could actually clean up our election systems. In the same way, this whole January 6th thing has been absolutely necessary in order to get us back to a place where we have some, you know, faith in the system, that we have some trust in our institutions, and it's going to take time to do that. And I'm just so thankful that we have somebody like Congressman Barry Loudermilk in Congress that's doing this, and that's actually getting us the truth. And frankly, it's been difficult for him to get the truth. This is this is tough. You're taking on the swamp, the entire swamp in this case, and they're doing everything they can to try to cover this thing up and prevent people from knowing the truth. And so it's important for us to support this, to share this information, to get it out there as much as possible, and to talk about it. All right, I'm gonna completely switch gears to a bit of a more fun topic, if you will, because that's a tough one. I mean, it is a tough one. January 6th is the abuse that's happening. I don't want to go there again. All right, we're going to switch to a more positive topic. We will be definitely back to this topic. I talk about January 6th way more than probably people want me to, but I think, again, you have to shine the light on this evil that is out there and make sure that people know what actually happened. So switching gears, we're going to have Coach Joe Kennedy back with us, where the movie is now out, Average Joe. Opportunity to see this. I really encourage people to do that. The movie is absolutely fantastic. Super, super proud of the group that put this on, that put it together. So thankful for my friend Kelly Shackelford that tried this case, that got this massive victory for us. I mean, this is I don't know if, people just don't realize how big a deal this victory was. They don't realize that this is actually what made it, has restored, there's no way to exaggerate it, restored religious liberty to a point where we have more religious liberty now than we've had at any time in my lifetime. So anyway, this is a big, big deal. The movie, you can actually see it in movie theaters over the next couple of days. Make sure that you do that, because the more tickets that are sold, the more likely it gets into more theaters. Anyway, check it out today, Average Joe, and Average Joe himself with us. Thanks so much for coming on, Joe.
Absolutely. It's always great to talk to you, brother.
Well, I got a cheat sheet. I got to watch your movie before it comes out, and man, I was blown away. I'm telling you, your story is incredible. I know people are initially going to go see this for the religious liberty story and the Supreme Court case. They're going to be amazed at the family story, just the blood of Christ on your life. I mean, anyway, I just want to tell you, I love the way the movie turned out, the way they did it. And it's an incredible testimony, and I hope you are as happy with it as I think the audiences are going to be. This is a really good movie, bro.
Yeah, but you know, I could be biased. If you saw it, I'm good now.
Well, you know, I'm sure even as we were talking off air before we came on, you know, I always worry, right, about the cheese factor. Are people going to take a Christian story and make it cheesy and cringe? And not at all, man. This was so good. My kids watched it with me, were crying. It was just, and it wasn't just the religious, that which, you know, I'm a patriot, man. I love that part, and just the way that your patriotism came out was so good. But your vulnerability, you and Denise being willing to tell your whole story right from the beginning of the movie too. Like, this is not at the end. I mean, you guys jump right into it. I love it. I think this is going to just change hearts and minds, not just tell the story of the Supreme Court case. You got to be thrilled.
Yeah, man. I think God has something to say still. So I'm believing that this will be all right.
So I got to ask you. So when they were starting to even talk about the movie possibilities, at what point did you start thinking, you know, I want this to be more than just the legal battle? I want to tell the story of how Christ redeemed our marriage, how he redeemed my life, all that. Like, when did that hit?
Well, it originally hit me, and the brains behind it, Troy. He heard one of my testimonies when I kind of spilled my guts to the world, and he said, wow, this needs to be told. So we both had the vision of telling a real story. It's not just, like you said, it's not just a legal battle, which would be, to me, that'd be absolutely boring. And it's not the uber religious one, you know, where they're cramming God down your throat. We want it to be where everybody is, it touches everybody and affects everybody, because it's the First Amendment. It's not a left or a right side. And I wanted them to be true to Denise and I's story. That was one of the biggest things. And they really did a good job with Denise. That's what my biggest fear was, is that, man, this would be cheesy and she looks terrible, but it was awesome.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a gift to pull off a movie like this, and for them to tell the story the way they did, and for you guys to say, "Hey, we're not gonna do the thing where, you know, once you become famous with something like this, you know, that we hide all the bad stuff and we just look like superheroes and all that." Instead of that, you're like, "Hey, man," which is, of course, the title, right, and your book and everything. I mean, it's like God used us; He can use anybody out there, and I just love that. And even, of course, during the trial, the you know, the difficulty that y'all had as a married couple, the world's got its spotlight on you. You're constantly having to deal with this. You know, Denise is just wanting to have life back home in your community. I mean, all of that comes through, and people don't realize this was, what was it, 9 years, a 9-year battle?
Yeah, it took 8 years in the court system and 9 football seasons to get me back out onto the field. So it was a long, long haul.
That's just the grace of God, even, you know, for you guys to endure that, especially like you even, you know, make it clear in the movie, you know, you would have never thought God would have used you for this type of battle. And so then, okay, great, fine, God used me, but you have to drag me through the coals for 9 years, right? It's just like,
we had some conversations, and he's probably up there laughing, and I didn't see the big picture, because only thing I was asking for was to be reinstated and to be able to pray after a football game. That's not a huge ask. That's not even newsworthy. That's nothing. And yeah. God took it, and the American public and their prayers took it to a whole new level, where it ended up being a religious liberty for all of America. I mean, Amen. Who would have ever thought that was going to happen?
Yeah. Even I think, and people are just now finding out, which is one of the cool things about the movie. I love the way they did Willie Robertson at the end to tell the story. Of course, it was like, oh my gosh, I loved it because, I just did, like you and I talked about before, I had to redo part of our biblical citizenship class because this changes all of the religious liberty cases and what we teach in that class. And so I filmed this interview with Kelly, walking through all that. So we got like this 15-minute thing that we added to biblical citizenship. And it's, of course, Kelly and me as lawyers talking about all the lawyer stuff, right? And going through all of that. And it was like for Willie Robertson to explain, essentially from a duck blind, I think he's standing in a pond somewhere. Anyway, for him to explain in just like 2 minutes, he takes all of the legal mumbo jumbo and just distills it down. And in 2 minutes, you understand, wow, this is a game changer.
If it was me trying to tell that story or Kelly, man, I would have fallen asleep if Kelly would have told it. I love him to death, but he is a lawyer through and through.
Well, and I know we got some listeners maybe that haven't heard your story yet, and they're going, what are these guys talking about? We're going to have a link today at our website for the longer interview we did with Joe months ago and the one we did with Kelly just a few weeks back. But Joe, just to say, I love how the movie shows that you were not trying to seek a spotlight. You were literally just trying to live up to your deal with God of saying, I'm going to thank you after every game. And that came through in the movie. I thought the guy that played you, I think it's Eric, is it Close?
Eric Close, yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching him in Nashville and some other stuff. I mean, it was so professional. I mean, all the actors so good. None of the cheese factor was so good. But that part really came through too, was that, hey, you were just trying, you didn't want to go coach even. It was like God just kept hitting you over the head to even become a coach. So
it was terrible. I don't know anything about football. I was like, man, if you want me to be a wrestling coach or something, we could talk, but I don't know anything about football. There's no X's and O's in this head. So yeah, I knew see, that's just a sense of humor that, and there are no coincidences in the world. It's there's something going on out there.
Yeah. It's almost like, and you're going to probably think I'm overdoing it here, but I mean, in the same way, maybe it's because we also just watched this thing about King David, but the way he plucks King David out of that shepherd's field to change the world and to set in motion an incredible trajectory, it's like he knew this Supreme Court case a decade later, after you fulfilled your promises to him, that he would use you to change America, literally restore the First Amendment of the Constitution. I can't say that with enough, you can't overplay that hand. You restored freedom of religion in this country. God restored freedom of religion in this country using your story.
Yeah, you said it. If he could use me, he could use anybody. So, yeah, props to him.
Amen. Are you getting to coach right now? You're back on the field, right? You should be right in the middle of football.
Yeah, no. Last season when I went back and stepped on the field, they did not make it fun, and it was better after the first game that I just walked away on my own terms.
No
so
kidding.
My wife and I, we resigned. We moved back here to Florida to take care of her dad, and life has just been good. And I let everybody heal and move on with their lives.
Amen.
And let the team focus on football instead of any distractions.
That makes sense. Makes total sense. And honestly, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking as somebody that's always putting on events and trying to get people engaged in the political struggle of our nation. I'm like, okay, that means coaches available. So are you getting to go out and share your story and encourage people to be involved? Are you doing some of that? Can people book you to speak, or can we do that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That you could go to CoachJoeKennedy.com, the most original website you could possibly imagine. And yeah, that's all I've been doing is going around the country and encouraging people to stand up for their rights as Americans.
I love it.
And you know me, I'm not a big preachy guy. I don't know the Bible well or anything, but man, I so believe in religious liberty and the freedoms Americans need to exercise, not just take for granted, but exercise those rights, especially to get out and vote, especially this season. Oh man, this is a perfect time for people to stand up and do what's right.
Amen. Amen. Stay with us, folks. We got to take a quick break. Coach Joe Kennedy, our special guest today. The movie is out now. Go see it. Average Joe. So check out theaters close to you, and I'm telling you, you're going to love it. It's hilarious. It's powerful, and it is encouraging. Go check it out today. We'll be back. You're listening to At the Core.
The Stand provides a Christian perspective on current issues that are important to your family. Produced by the American Family Association, this monthly magazine is full of articles and stories about people who are making a difference in their community and around the world. Sign up today and receive a free 6-month subscription. Visit thestand.net or call 1-800-326-4543.
Are you being honest and dependable in your personal money matters? Honesty is one of the first things Jesus requires of new believers. When some tax collectors approached Jesus to be baptized, they asked, "Teacher, what shall we do?" And he said to them, "Collect no more than what you have been ordered to." You need to be honest to be effective for God's kingdom work.
Tune in to Faith and Finance with Rob West, weekdays at 9 a.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Whether it's a story about prayer in public schools or battles for biblical truth within our denominations, the American Family News Network is here to tell you what the newsmakers are saying.
We are starting to see a rebellion against corporate America's endorsement, coddling of the LGBTQ agenda.
The American Family News Network is comprised of news anchors and editors that team up to bring you news from a Christian perspective.
A TRO, for non-legal types out there, is basically just an emergency order that would have allowed Liam to go back to school wearing the t-shirt he wants to wear. And again, that t-shirt says there are two genders.
Not only can you listen to reports on the radio, but you can also visit afn.net for coverage of the latest headlines.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, out on the campaign trail, was ready with an answer on the meaning of the word woke.
American Family News, reporters you can trust.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
We're back here on At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green. I'm Rick Green, America's Constitution Coach, Coach Joe Kennedy. I know that sounds weird. I'm Constitution Coach, and then there's Coach Kennedy, football coach, who didn't play football. It's so funny. I mean, anyway, you got to watch the movie, and the whole story is just incredible. Anyway, back with Coach Kennedy now, and Coach, man, appreciate you so much. This is so good. You know, Joe, I'm sure you feel this when you're out there talking to groups, but that for such a time as this, your authenticity is actually what will cause more people to listen than, they don't want the slick, perfect, recites everything per your speeches kind of stuff. It's like your ability to just get up and tell your story, I would think right now hits harder than anything else. So I think, for such a time as this, that you are free to do that God's positioned you right now, not only for this election and this season, but just honestly, I mean, I'm one of these guys that thinks it's going to be a 10, 15 year battle here to really make this stuff stick and to re-till the ground in America. So, man, I'm thrilled. You're going to be on the front lines of doing that.
Oh, absolutely. You nailed that. And that's what I want to be. I always want to be available and just have God use me, because I don't know what my next calling is. It was called to be a coach. It was called for me to be a Marine, a husband, a father. And now I have no idea what God has next. So I'm just being available to use me in any way, shape, or form he wants me to.
That's one of the things I didn't know about you, by the way, was I knew you were a Marine. I had no idea you had, what was it, a 20-year career, 25-year career? And then this coaching.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, see, I don't know. In my mind, it was just like, okay, he did the Marines like 8 years or whatever, and then has been a coach for 20 years, and like football expert. I don't know. I had no idea how God. It's so much better. The story's so much better than I had imagined.
That's what we really wanted to do. We wanted to tell the whole entire story. Everybody sees the headlines or some the quick blog on social media, but they don't really hear the backstory and understand anything. So even the naysayers that are out there, it was like, oh, he did it for this reason. This should show them exactly who I am. They could judge me after this movie, and if they still hate me, hey, so be it. But at least they know the story.
Amen. Now, what is the website we need to send people to learn more about the movie? Is it CoachJoeKennedy.com? From there, they can also get the movie as well.
The movie itself, we have links on CoachJoeKennedy.com, but also AverageJoeMovie.com. another very original title. I'm not very creative in those areas.
You crack me up, man. Oh my gosh. You're the kind of guy I want to spend time with. This is awesome. Totally awesome.
It'll be nationwide, which really blew my mind. I started looking at some of the places I used to live across the United States, and it is playing in almost all the states everywhere. So you can put in your zip code and find out when it's playing, where it's playing. And I can't stress enough how important it is for people to go out and see the movie. We just had Reagan come out. We had Forge, God's Not Dead's coming out this week. So we need to really support these films and get our messages across and make a real noise in Hollywood that you don't have to be this super gazillion, $1 million, gazillion dollar budget. It could be just the everyday stories of everyday Americans that are entertaining and inspiring. And when you walk away, you actually feel good about it and feel like you could take on the world. I always say it's like the Rocky movie. When I got out of Rocky, man, I felt like, man, who wants to fight? I'm ready to go. That's what I really want people to do.
You do. I'm telling you, my kids were like standing on their feet at the end of the movie going, what's our fight? Where do we go? Where do we get involved, man? Where do we take our stand? And that's exactly what you want. Man, I love it. And just to reiterate what you were saying, because, the more people that go, the more theaters will either keep it or even add. They'll add theaters if there's a big enough showing. So we want to just flood the movie theaters.
Yeah. Bring your churches, bring your friends, family. It's obviously a good thing for a date night because there's a lot of, I hate to say it, like chick flick kind of parts to the movie. And we really wanted to exemplify my wife and get that love story. So not to get too cheesy, but it was very much a love story of my love for the country, for my wife, and for God. And I wanted to tell that story where it touches people's hearts, not just, something entertaining, but really people feel it and have a good laugh, have a good cry, whatever emotions that they feel. I really want them to go through the roller coaster on this.
They will, man. They will. I'm telling you, this is so well done. And you're right. Great date night. In fact, it's much more of a love story than a legal story or political story or any of those things. It's real life, folks. You got to go see it. Absolutely. CoachJoeKennedy.com is the website. CoachJoeKennedy.com. Get his book there. Book him to speak. Let's spread the news, because most people, Joe, they don't know the jail cell's been unlocked, but they haven't walked out yet. They're not actually living out these freedoms, and we want them to know. So
absolutely,
man. You're a warrior.
Thank you, brother.
I appreciate you, brother. I look forward to locking shields with you for years to come.
Amen to that, dude. I can't wait till we get together, because we're going to have a lot of fun.
Man, what a great guy. What a great movie. What a great guy. What a great story. I mean, that is the American story, right? I mean, that is, I couldn't get any more iconic for how to restore freedom than Coach Joe Kennedy's story. I'm telling you, this was tailor-made. The Lord he just put this thing in motion exactly. And this happens a lot we go through these tough times, right? And we think, oh, there's just no way out, or it couldn't get any worse, or where's the Lord moving? And he's got all these pieces he's moving. He's got all these pieces of the puzzle he's putting in place perfectly. It was that way throughout America's history. It's that way throughout the providential story of history. I mean, you go back to Joseph, right? Joseph was, wait a minute, it just hit me. Coach Joe Kennedy. Joseph was exactly that kind of guy. Think about it. You go back to the Bible. He's sold by his brothers into slavery, and you're thinking, what a horrible story. There's no good outcome here. This kid is being taken away from his family, sold into a strange land. There's no good outcome here. This is the end of the line. And yet, God is moving him into a position to quite literally save the world. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. That's what ends up happening with the story of Joseph. But first, you have these moments that would typically be despair. I mean, he's sold by his brothers into slavery, and has to be thinking, wow, my life is over. And yet he gets there, and because he doesn't despair, and because he does what we learn and are told later in the New Testament to do, in James, to count it all joy when we experience various trials, knowing that God is using that to make us perfect and complete, lacking nothing. For Joseph, these were obviously trying times, and yet he honors the Lord. He honors others. He does his best to have good work ethic. You know that he had to be a person of joy in order to move up in the ranks the way that he did, to ultimately run Potiphar's house completely. There was nothing kept from him except Potiphar's wife. And then when she throws herself at him, he is wrongfully accused and ends up in prison. So wait, I've gone from slavery to prison, and somehow you're telling me God's going to use this? Yes, exactly. And so then God uses him in prison, and he rises through the ranks there, and then he's in the perfect place at the perfect time to reveal those dreams for the butler and the baker. And then God uses that, but not for 2 years. I mean, I'm thinking, if I'm Joseph, I'm thinking, God, if your timing was better, right? How many times do we do that? Where I don't know, maybe not you, but me, I am so impatient, and I try not to be, and I pray for patience. But God, hurry up and give me patience, right? That's my patience. Hurry up and give me patience. Anyway, so think about it. What Joseph goes through, from slavery to prison to then being lifted up to a position of quite literally saving the world. The world would have starved, and God was positioning Joseph for that incredible story. Well, the Joseph of our day, Coach Joe Kennedy, put through all kinds of trials and tribulations in his life. And I appreciate this part of the story too, and you'll get more of this when you watch the movie. Part of those trials and tribulations we bring about ourselves by our own dumb decisions, right? Okay, I'm raising my hand here. You can't see me on radio, but I'm raising my hand. That's me, right? A lot of my trials and tribulations were not just the enemy or not just God, planning things to prepare me. It was me making bad decisions, but yet somehow, some way, Romans is true. All things work together for good for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And so even my dumb decisions, even when I made mistakes that cost me or cost my family or cost a campaign or cost a business or whatever it was, God was using that and working that and moving the pieces of the puzzle together. And exactly the same thing happened for Coach Joe Kennedy, to all of our benefit. In other words, it wasn't just that God was working that together for Joe. God was using Joe's life, Joe's mistakes, Joe's good moves, Joe's decisions to honor him, to honor God, Joe's decisions to follow through on his commitment to the Lord. God was using all of that to position Joe to be in a position to have the backbone and the courage and, dare I even say, just the stubbornness to see this thing through for 9 years of litigation, to put Joe in a position to have the right school district, right? Because the school district had to be stubborn enough to fight back against Joe for this thing to get all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And then for this decision to be handed down that is a game changer for our nation. It opens the door for religious liberty to be restored everywhere in this country. And here's the thing. We're at a place where the jail cell has been opened, but people don't know to walk through. And so this next phase of Joe's life is going to be to bring awareness now to our fellow Americans that this freedom exists, that this Supreme Court decision is so good that now we have to go out there and get the 10 Commandments displays put back up, to get the "In God We Trust" displayed, to get the nativity scenes and all of these religious expressions. And for those of you that might be thinking, oh, what do those things really matter? Because God consciousness matters. A culture acknowledging God matters. It matters, first of all, in our relationship as a nation to God, but it also matters in just the way we live out our lives when there are reminders all around us that there is a God, that our freedom comes from God, and that freedom must be lived out with a respect for the authority of God. Does that make sense? I mean, those steps absolutely matter. And those steps begin with an acknowledgement, a recognition, a consciousness of God. And so what Coach Kennedy's case has done for us is open the door to restoring that God consciousness in our culture. And folks, I want to challenge you. Be thinking right now, past the election, I know probably I should have been talking about that today, and I'll maybe close out with that. But thinking past the election to 2025, what are you going to do to help restore freedom in this country? The door is open. At Patriot Academy, we are absolutely with American Family Association and iVoterGuide.com and with Moms for Liberty and Flashpoint Nation and with all of these groups, we are going to lock shields and press forward to restore religious liberty in this country, to restore the constitutional republic, to restore jurisdictions. But friends, it begins with you. You have to start thinking about, what am I going to do after this election? Regardless of how things turn out, and let's be blunt, it looks good, but who knows what's going to happen. Press the advantage. Right now, you need to be voting early, folks. And can I just tell you, don't wait for Election Day. Vote early. I've never, but it was a mistake on Trump's part to tell people in the past to only vote on Election Day. Vote early because you don't know what's going to happen. Personally, you don't know. You might get sick that day, or the kids might get sick, or your car might break down, or you might have a car wreck, or whatever. I've never thought it was a good idea, if you have early voting in your area, never a good idea to wait for Election Day. Even though I enjoy Election Day, it's kind of like civic ritual. It's just kind of a fun thing to do, to celebrate our freedom. I've always taken one of my kids when they were little into the polling place with me. Do that, but just do it early. And then on Election Day, go stand out at the polls and wave signs for your candidate of choice, or go knock on doors and ask people if they voted, or call all of your friends and family to get them out to vote on Election Day, but don't wait for Election Day. And then after the election this year, let's press the advantage. Don't let up. Press the gas. We have a window of opportunity to convert millions of people to the biblical principles of liberty. Let's press the gas after this election. Let's get after it, man. Let's take ground back in this nation. Make sure you are on the Patriot Academy email list, because we are and signed up as a coach. Even if you know nothing about the Constitution or history or any of those things, Coach Kennedy being on today is the perfect opportunity for you to think about, okay, what am I going to coach? Think about what God used him to do when he wasn't even a football coach, but became a football coach to be in the position to do what God did through this case. How about you? How can God use you as a coach? You may say, just like Coach Kennedy thought he was not equipped or prepared or had the experience to do what God ended up using him to do. In the same way, what's God going to use you for? Sign up to be a Constitution coach. Or if you like the term host, that's fine. We're bringing back that term. Constitution host. There. You don't have to know anything about the Constitution or history or any of those things. You just have to host. You just got to put out the coffee and cake. You got to open up your living room or the fellowship hall at your church, or wherever it is that God's calling you to host this class. ConstitutionCoach.com. or PatriotAcademy.com. Get on there today. Get signed up so that you're prepared to hit 2025, hit the ground running, and be a leader in your community. Be a catalyst in your community. All right, be ready, because we're going to have a lot of fun activities for you to do in 2025. But get signed up today at PatriotAcademy.com so you're on the email list and you get those notices. Make sure you get signed up as a Constitution host or coach so that you can be leading the way in 2025. So much is available to us right now to take positive action to change the culture. Thanks to Coach Kennedy. Thanks to Barry Loudermilk. Thanks to you for listening today. I sure appreciate you being a part of the solution, not just complaining, not just listening, but taking action. Thanks so much for listening to At the Core with Walker Wildman and Rick Green.